Indiana News Desk is made possible in part by Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Mallard Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana News Desk. With colder weather setting in, service providers are worried the city's rule against camping tents and parks will make it a difficult winter for people who are unhoused.
During this season particularly, we try to stick together because we don't want to freeze to death.
Unhoused individuals also say the ban has disrupted their sense of community. As the number of lawyers in the state continues to dwindle, those in rural areas needing legal help are being affected the most.
What do we do to attract people to come and serve and see the beauty of a rural community and how that can be a very positive lifestyle?
In Indiana, upwards of 2/3 of the counties are considered legal deserts. And we talk with an expert about the growing dangers of artificial intelligence. We'll have these stories plus the latest news from across the state right now on Indiana News Desk. Welcome to Indiana News Desk. I'm Joe Wren. Community organizers and service providers in Bloomington are concerned about the safety of people experiencing homelessness as the weather gets colder. Ben Taboutier reports on the effect a new rule that bans camping tents in public parks during the daytime is having on those who are looking for winter shelter.
People stood in line last week at Seminary Park while volunteers with Help Ourselves served up breakfast. Help Ourselves serves breakfast there every Tuesday and has been around for a couple years. FNEX, the group's head comrade, said the daytime ban on tents implemented in August increased stress for people experiencing homelessness.
So I'd just say there's been more radicalization in terms of relationships and just reactions to something so hard being pressed. And so many people hang out here, and then, you're not allowed to have a structure out here anymore.
But she's also noticed an increased desire for unity among people coming for breakfast. One person in line for breakfast, Roosevelt Hawthorne, has been homeless for 7 years. He says the ban on tents affected his ability to find safe places to stay in the evening with his partner.
Most of us already got mental health issues or drug abuse issues and stuff like that. So to feel turned away and stuff like that, right, we try to, overshadow that depression with some type of intoxicant and stuff like that, right, because we had that in our past and stuff like that.
The ban disconnected Hawthorne and his partner from people they'd been in touch with before because people are going to different sides of town. Hawthorne says mutual aid like Help Ourselves makes him feel more connected to the community. The Indiana Recovery Alliance reported an increase of accidental overdoses in Monroe County last week. Its executive director, Nicholas Voyles, says it doesn't normally issue drug supply warnings because it doesn't have the technology to test drug samples and must go off anecdotal evidence. Outreach with the Recovery Alliance goes 5 days a week to meet people experiencing homelessness at encampments in Bloomington and provide services. Voyles says the ban's made it harder to find people and worries that the ban makes it more likely for people to use substances alone.
So you have this interaction with other people, you have these people that bring services there that know where the people are. When you strip that and put it on edge, people are just left free-falling. You know what I mean? They will have to find another place to use, which is scary.
But he says you can't attribute a rise in overdoses to any one issue, like a tent policy. A lot of factors need to be considered.
You're disrupting a series of lives, right? So you have a normal stream of lives that go into this park during the day. They might just be laying there because all night long they couldn't find a safe place.
Before August, tents were already not allowed in parks after 11 p.m. Boyle says winter is always a dangerous time of year for people experiencing homelessness. But because tents aren't allowed in parks at all now, services and outreach will need to be ramped up to help bridge issues of sheltering during the day. The Bloomington Board of Parks Commissioners passed the daytime rule against tents in parks in August, citing almost 900 total incident reports at Switchyard and Seminary Parks between August 2022 and July 2023. Bloomington Parks Department Interim Director Tim Street says the rule was implemented to make the parks safer and more accessible to everyone. He says they do get incident reports still, and a few months is too early to quantify the rule's effectiveness.
We want to keep continuing to look at it and see if we feel like it's being effective and helping parks meet that goal of being open and safe for everybody.
Street says they haven't confiscated anyone's tent yet, and if someone has a tent up during the day, resource officers with the Bloomington Police Department work with them. The executive director of Beacon Inc., Forrest Gilmore, says its nightly shelter has 40 beds and is typically full. He says right now they're getting a lot of requests from people for blankets, tents, sleeping bags, and other cold weather gear. Hawthorne says he and his partner argue regularly over where they're going to sleep and move around nightly.
During this season particularly, we try to stick together because we don't want to freeze to death and stuff like that, right?
Hawthorne says the community needs more housing options with fewer requirements. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Ben Taboutier.
The White House recently released an executive order with a list of guidelines to improve safety and security for artificial intelligence companies. But is it too late to rein in what AI is able to do? And how blurred are the lines between AI and humanity becoming? Isabella Vesperini has this report.
Isa Kasari is co-director of the IU Cybersecurity and Global Policy Program and executive director of the IU Cybersecurity Clinic. He says we are already years behind responding to AI.
The more that it becomes integrated into all of our systems of life, the more that we become reliant on it, the harder it is to disentangle from that technology and the harder it is to control against its negative effects.
Asari thinks the executive order is lacking when it comes to identifying what it means to be a human in a technology-driven world and what laws should be put in place to further regulate AI. Beth Plale is Michael A. and Lori Burns McRobbie Bicentennial Professor of Computer Engineering at IU. She doesn't find the executive order lacking. The order builds on the blueprint for the AI Bill of Rights that the White House released last year. The document included principles for design, use, and deployment of AI.
I do think it lays out a case for, I would say, a more conservative approach to how we think about regulating. There are imminent threats that to health and safety and economic viability.
Asari says it will be hard to enforce these guidelines because they rely on the integrity of AI companies to follow through. Yet it is in AI companies' interests to have them in place. Ideally, these companies aim to solve societal issues, such as minimizing teacher workload and making the healthcare system more efficient. Asari thinks Congress should take more action in passing comprehensive legislation on AI security and data privacy.
There's serious concerns about what happens when an amoral actor or a bad actor gets a hold of AI technologies. There's sort of unlimited amounts of ways that AI has been, is being, and can be used to limit people's right of movement, to limit people's privacy, to surveil and attack people, you name it.
Plale expects educators to push more for a transparency of sources in classwork and increase awareness. Plale also thinks the executive order will encourage more conversations nationally when it comes to AI research and funding through Congress. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Isabella Vesperini.
We're joined now by Isa Kasari, who you saw in the piece. For more, welcome to the show, Isa.
Hey, Joe.
So you said in the story the White House's executive order is lacking. So what would you like to see?
Well, I mean, I think to be clear, it's a positive step in the right direction, but the thing that's missing is twofold. One, it says already in the bill that, or in the act, that you want Congress to take comprehensive action on privacy. think that's something that's lacking. It doesn't do this. The second thing is that there's an element of calling for scrutiny and not accountability. And so, if we're saying that we want AI companies to be more transparent about their red teaming efforts and you name it, how are we going to hold them accountable if they do this or don't do it, right? And so I think we need to think a little bit more clearly about the mechanisms to hold people accountable.
There's been a lot of news about banning TikTok, and I know Twitter, X has been having problems too. What are some of the dangers of social media and AI?
Yeah. I mean, anytime you connect a sort of social system with technology, it's going to result in a lot of data, right? And that puts a threat on our privacy and then consequently on a lot of other rights that we have. And so we've become really entangled with social media right now and sort of socially connected tech. And the challenge is that it's really difficult to disentangle that, right? And so we didn't realize that we had a need for privacy rights, the way that we do until we had social media. But at this point, it's so connected to everything that we do that it's really hard to turn that back around.
So ChatGPT was launched a year ago today. We've seen it used in classrooms. Teachers probably wondering, is this real? Is this a real paper? Who wrote this paper?
Right.
So first of all, can you say what is ChatGPT and how is this affecting classrooms?
Okay, so ChatGPT is a large language model. It's based on, it's a generative AI. Okay, so it produces content based on input given by the user. The challenge, as you say, is that it makes our ability, particularly in a school setting, but to verify authorship, for example, a lot more difficult. But the thing that I'll say is this. The question isn't really whether or not we can tell that a student wrote a thing. The question is, how are we changing our assessment to properly assess the human capabilities that we're wanting to assess? If a student is basically answering our test or writing our papers by just regurgitating information that's widely available on the internet, then we haven't really assessed them for critical thinking or for creativity. And so the challenge for us is thinking again about how we design our courses, how we design our assessment particularly.
So we got to go about 30 seconds, but I know this is a big question, but do you see AI as a threat to society?
Yes, I mean totally. I mean I think it poses an existential threat to the way that we live, work, learn, and exist with one another. But not the way that we all think. It's not Terminators or iRobot, but it's rather just a fundamental reckoning on what it means to be human in a world where where the things that we do are constantly being challenged by machines.
Isak, thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
A new brewery is now officially open on Bloomington's north side. Heartwork Brewing had its soft opening November 17th and hosted a grand opening celebration last night featuring food trucks, raffle, plenty of beers on tap. Clayton Baumgarth reports.
Since Heartwork Brewing's soft opening, co-owner Aubrey Williams says Bloomington has been eagerly supporting the new establishment.
We want to highlight how grateful we are to the community here in Bloomington. Being a locally family-owned brewery, Dan and I are both military veterans as well. Coming home was really important to these two families.
Aubrey and her husband Dan Dutcher, a brewer with 10 years of experience, started the brewery with their friend Jeff Brown. Originally, the team planned to open last year, but Dutcher says the renovation and licensing process took longer than anticipated.
We were actually hoping we'd be open last August, but just one thing stacks on another, and I feel like we probably hit every roadblock possible.
Customers can expect some staple brews as well as a rotating selection of more experimental flavors. Dutcher says lagers, single and double IPAs, stouts, and even seltzers will always be available. He eventually wants to have new releases on a regular basis.
So I'm really trying to just refine my process and improve them each time I brew onto it, and figure out what I like, what I don't, what I need to add or remove, and just I want to get to the point where we're doing about one new beer a week.
At the moment, Heartwork is for the 21 and over crowd only. They plan to become family friendly in the future after acquiring their retail permit. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Clayton Baumgarth.
Heartwork Brewing says it's also exploring the addition of house-made food offerings in the future. For now, outside food, food trucks, and pre-packaged snacks will fill that gap. Coming up next on Indiana News Desk. County officials are balking at the city's plan for an interlocal agreement to run a new convention center, further delaying the project. And rural communities in Indiana are being affected more than others as the number of lawyers in the state continues to dwindle. These stories and more right here on Indiana News Desk.
I'm originally from Mumbai, India. I also grew up in Singapore before moving to the US for my undergrad. The exciting thing about doing a master's here at IU was that I found WTIU, WFIU. I got to help produce Indiana News Desk, which started off just helping the producer, and then it led to some weeks when he was out, me producing the show. Having people on the team that have been doing this so long, that really helps because, you know, they catch those mistakes and they teach you how to not make those mistakes again. Sarah Whitmire, who's the news bureau chief at Indiana Public Media, connected me with Gretchen Frazee, who works at PBS NewsHour. So she used to work here at Indiana Public Media. She ended up saying, you know, why don't you apply? So that's how I ended up getting a broadcast assistant position at PBS NewsHour. Hi, I'm Kayan Tara. I really am grateful for my experience here at Indiana Public Media. I encourage you to support the next generation of journalists by supporting WTIU.
Welcome back to Indiana News Desk. We're joined now by Callie Lichter for the latest headlines from around the state. Hi, Callie.
Hi, Joe. Indiana wasted little time finding a new head football coach. The university announced the hiring of Curt Cignetti Thursday, just 4 days after firing Tom Allen after 7 up-and-down seasons.
Hoosier Nation, Curt Cignetti here, Coach Sig. I'm excited to get going. I'm all in. Look out for the Hoosiers. We're going to get this thing rolling, one day at a time.
Cignetti had a 52-9 record in 5 seasons at James Madison. He was named the Sun Belt's Coach of the Year after leading the Dukes to an 11-1 record in the first bowl game in program history. A plan for the Monroe County Convention Center expansion may not move forward until 2024 after county commissioners declined to vote on an interlocal agreement with the city this week. County officials are concerned about the membership of a commission that oversees innkeepers' tax revenues and of a building corporation that will issue debt. Mayor John Hamilton and the city council signed the agreement 2 weeks ago, but it must be ratified by the commissioners and county council to be effective.
It is unfortunate that this was announced as a done deal because I don't know where that came from, but it's not, and it shouldn't be.
The commissioners meet again December 6th, but are unlikely to vote on the agreement until after the next county council meeting December 12th. Renovations to the downtown Bloomington fire station damaged in the 2021 flash floods began this week. The city's Board of Public Works last week approved 4 contracts on the project, totaling about $4.5 million. The downtown fire station on 4th Street and another station on Woodlawn Avenue were both damaged by flooding, along with the Bloomington Police Headquarters on 3rd Street. Bloomington Fire Chief Jason Moore says he expects renovations on the downtown station to be finished by October 2024. Electric bills for Indianapolis area residents were expected to go up more than $17 a month. But that increase could be less than $10 a month after a settlement AES Indiana reached between consumer advocates, the city of Indianapolis, and various companies. Among other things, it bans shutoffs on weekends and certain holidays, further delays, disconnects for medically fragile Hoosiers, and allows late fees for some lower income customers to be waived.
Sends a signal out there that, you know, that we do have to address and be concerned with our medically fragile households. We do have to do something to address the high number of disconnections.
AES Indiana says the increase will pay for things like making its electric grid more modern and resilient, promoting job creation, expanding ways to pay bills, and tree trimming. Elise Nishala is Indiana's new state comptroller. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports Governor Eric Holcomb appointed her to the position this week, replacing Tara Klutz, who will leave office this week.
The state comptroller pays Indiana's bills and works with local governments to distribute local tax revenue. Holcomb says Nishala's experience as president of the Boone County Council and leader of the Indiana County Councils Association positions her perfectly to step into the role.
She's worked with the legislature, she's worked with counties, cities, towns. She's
been about transparency.
Nishala praised the fiscal stewardship of Indiana leaders and her predecessor, Tara Klutz, as she begins the job this week.
I am fully on board to write the next chapters for our state in financial responsibility on behalf of Hoosiers and to hold up that light for our nation.
Nishala can serve out the remainder of Klutz's term, which expires in 2026. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
Terre Haute Mayor Duke Bennett says it's business as usual before his 16 years in office is up January 1st. The four-term Republican mayor was ousted in the November general election by political newcomer, Democrat Brandon Sackbun.
I want to make sure they hit the ground running. I don't want any gray areas or anything that we couldn't talk about ahead of time in preparations.
Bennett says the master plan for Fairbanks Park is almost done, and the overpass at 13th and 8th Avenue continues to move forward. And he says the Larry Bird Museum off of the new convention center should open early next year. Respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, is a respiratory virus that causes cold-like symptoms, and it has become increasingly common this year. Infants and older adults are at risk of developing severe symptoms and needing hospitalization. An available vaccine protects those aged 60 or older and pregnant women, and a specialized drug provides antibodies to newborns.
For everybody else, meaning if you're not an infant or toddler, or you're not elderly, or you're not pregnant, it's really just prevention. It's, stay home when you're sick. It's good hand washing, especially before you eat.
And Joe Carroll says if you have RSV and are not at high risk, you should just treat it like a common cold.
Just like the doctor said, if you're sick, stay home and wash your hands, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Thanks, Callie. And Indiana Supreme Court report says the bar passage rate declined last year to 63%, down from 71% just 2 years ago. Leaders say younger attorneys aren't replacing older ones, with rural areas being hit the hardest. Clayton Baumgarth looks at how an attorney shortage affects rural populations.
The court says the state has about 2 lawyers for every 1,000 residents. That's below the nationwide average of 4 lawyers per 1,000 residents, putting Indiana in the bottom 10 nationally. And as Bernice Corley, executive director of the Indiana Public Defender Council, puts it, we're not alone.
It's national. Indiana is not by itself. Fewer people are going to law school. Fewer people see a future in law. Why that is, I don't know.
Corley was one of the speakers at the Summit for Rural Justice and Public Health Professionals held in Wabash this year. While the attorney shortage is a national problem, its effects are felt most in rural areas where the lack of attorneys is causing legal experts to raise alarms. The American Bar Association considers any county with less than 1 lawyer per 1,000 people a legal desert. In Indiana, it's estimated that 46 to 60 of Indiana's 90 counties fit that definition. That covers all of the state's 42 rural counties and then some.
So what do we do to attract people to come and serve and see the beauty of a rural community and how that can be a very positive lifestyle and very nice for families and for single people who just want to try something different.
A few ideas are being shared about how rural areas can attract new attorneys. One idea Corley mentioned is regionalization, where smaller counties would share a chief public defender and a pool of attorneys. Another is to increase the benefits of working in a small community.
Often these people are working on contract or part-time. Provide them health insurance to encourage or incentivize them to stay. Do other efforts to make sure that these people have a working condition that is conducive to doing their job.
Others say streamlining the education process and making it more appealing to students are keys. Joel Schum, a clinical professor at the McKinney School of Law at IU, says the school has switched how it teaches its students in an effort to make the learning process more convenient for those living outside of urban areas.
Our evening program used to be 5 nights a week. Students would have to drive to law school for classes 2 hours a night, 5 nights a week. Now we have a hybrid program, so students only have to be in Indianapolis twice a week.
Additionally, in 2019, McKinney started the Rural Justice Initiative, a placement program for students. Those selected after their second year spend 200 hours working in a rural county on a stipend. Schum says the program is just as helpful for those communities as it is for the students.
There's some counties with one judge who has to do everything, and so to be able to have some help from someone who's legally trained has been helpful to the judge, but mostly it's been helpful to our students to be able to experience that and hopefully decide whether that's something that they may want to do after they graduate.
Nathan Lund is one of the students who went through the Rural Justice Initiative this past summer in DeKalb County. He says that getting practical experience as part of his degree has been massively beneficial.
There's nothing like being in the courtroom itself. I learned so much from attorneys that were 3 years out of law school and then attorneys that were 40 years out of law school.
Lund witnessed firsthand the issues that arise while working in a small county.
You have these attorneys that are in 3 or 4 or 5 different firms, and so you have a lot of conflicts.
Another student, Hope Rice, says the program helped her realize the benefits of working in a rural community.
It also showed me that Indy wasn't the only option for me. So it really did kind of totally rewire my brain in what I thought I wanted to do, where I wanted to do it.
Whether the solution to the attorney shortage is regionalization, added benefits, or giving students firsthand experience, Corley says something must change.
I think we'll always kind of wrestle with an attorney shortage, and I really think communities are going to have to learn how to do more with less. And that's going to take cooperation, that's going to take giving up some independence to work together to get what is needed for a system.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Clayton Baumgarth.
Indiana Chief Justice Loretta Rush said this week she will convene a group to study the future of the legal profession. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana News Desk is made possible in part by Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Mallard-Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.